Hello, welcome to Looking Through the Glass. We're here with Giselle, and today we have Steve Frazier. Steve Frazier is an expert on caffeine and the effects that it has on your body. So today we're going to learn just how much we don't need caffeine in our lives.
How much of an addiction it is.
And how much of an addiction it is.
We can just end that right there. That's all you need to say. No, I'm teasing. Great introduction.
Thank you. Been working on him, man. We've been working on him.
Yeah, that's right. And you're definitely dramatically working on it well.
Thank you. Each day is new. Each episode is a very unique intro on its own.
That's right.
They all have to be. Each person is unique, and each situation is unique. And honestly, this one is. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about how caffeine really is a major addiction in.
That it is a classified drug. It is actually literally classified as a narcotic, correct?
Yep. Stimulant. Central nervous system stimulant. Yep.
Okay.
Psychoactive. I mean, there's all kinds of words we could use, but it messes with you. How's that?
So you have a backstory of how you actually got into researching caffeine to the depths that you have. So can you fill us in a little bit on how you got into all of this and where it led you and how it led you type thing?
Well, when I was 28, I bought my first restaurant. That was 40 years ago. Okay. And over the next 23 years, my wife and I built 5 more and we operated them, not all at the same time, but through that 23 years. Well, I was a chronic caffeine user. I lived on caffeine because I needed energy and I used that as a crutch. And it's funny because it was a Mexican restaurant and bar. They were small. We had them in malls. So I would drink caffeine all day and then I'd have a tequila and a beer at night to go to sleep, because you realize that when you're chronic, you do have a hard time going to sleep. And we're going to talk about the sleep cycle later on. But then we got out of the restaurant business. I continued to drink caffeine until 11 years ago. I had a health scare and I thought I was having a heart attack. So my wife took me to the emergency room and they hooked me up to an EKG. And we watching this every time I was having something called premature ventricular contractions. And everybody has them. I just happened to be sensitive. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I mean, I could feel it. I thought it was jumping out of my chest. So the doctor comes in. We're watching every time I have one, my EKG goes up. And he said, just so you know, you're going to be okay. This is normal. He said, you happen to be very sensitive to these, and so you can feel them. And he said, what you're feeling is real. You're not going to die. Okay. That was the gist. I said, so what causes this? And he said, well, stress. And then he paused and then he kind of smiled and he said, and caffeine. And I happened to be on my way that day to do I live in northern Wisconsin. I was driving to Milwaukee to do a demo for a pasta that my wife created, and 3 hours drive there and back, 6 hours on my feet. So I would just load up on caffeine. I mean, I'd have coffee all the way there. I'd have a cappuccino or a latte when I got there. I'd have an energy drink midday, and then another something right before I got in the car because I wanted to be alert. I didn't want to fall asleep. Well, when the doctor told me this, I thought, that's it. I'm done. Because I did not like this. And I had had a couple of episodes like this, but never this severe. So I quit. And so, like every good addict, I thought a couple of years later, I made it a couple of years, and I said, I can control this. I got this. I mean, those are the famous last words of every addict, right?
They absolutely are.
I can control this. Okay, well, that went right out the window.
I told myself that for 10 years.
Yep, right. Yep. So I started again. So that went on for 6 or 7 years. And then 2 years ago, I wasn't sleeping well. I knew I needed the energy in order to get going. So I was having coffee first thing in the morning. And so I quit cold turkey. And I'm telling you now, and I'll tell you throughout the interview, the show, don't quit cold turkey, because it's brutal and it's painful. Okay. And you can do it. I'm not telling you. And I did it. Okay. And I called up my daughter within 18 hours of quitting. And I had such a splitting headache. And the reason is that your adenosine receptors open up, and I'll get into that in a couple minutes. But so you have this massive blood flow to your brain, and you get this headache. And I said, so what can I do about this? She said, well, you can drink as much water as you can to help flush it. She said, you can humor yourself and take ibuprofen. It's not going to do anything, okay? Because it's ibuprofen or even Vicodin will not take the pain away, because it's your adenosine receptors. And so I had a headache and brain fog and fatigue for almost 3 days. Okay, so if you quit cold turkey, you need to budget for not being a human being for anywhere from 2 to 9 days. I mean, really chronic users, this can last for 9 days. So what
That's
happened
a pretty
is
long effect for even in the drug community.
yes,
your typical withdrawal response. Now, me, since I understand pharmaceutical a little bit more because I've had a withdrawal from those,
yep.
But in the drug community, the typical withdrawal time is 3 to 5 days.
Right. Yeah. And again, the 9 days is the exception, but it can, because I have anecdotal stories in my book of it taking 9 days for some people. And I'm on Facebook groups of quitting caffeine, and they have withdrawal symptoms for anywhere from 2 to 9 days. And with these people, they have negative symptoms of 12 to 18 months sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
Their bodies haven't
which is
reset.
way longer than fentanyl.
Right. And it just takes your body, because, and again, this is probably for people that have been doing this for decades.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that it definitely has an effect on your body. And if you are listening to this and you're saying, well, I'm not addicted and I don't need to drink coffee, I can just tell you to do this. Quit for 12 to 24 hours. And if you have no side effects, you're not addicted. Okay. Rarely, because we all process caffeine differently. You could, and women and men as well. But the normal chronic caffeine, when I say chronic, that means over 200 milligrams. That means that it's probably you're drinking 2 to 5 cups a day. You might throw in a soda. You might throw in an energy drink. Okay. You're doing 300, 500, 600 milligrams a day. And what happens is that you're going to have side effects. And so I would say taper off, and we talk about that in my program. We talk about it in the book. And so why did I start this? Is because 13 years ago, my wife got sick. And for 2 years, we went to 17 different doctors. And as she would call them, she calls them ologists, because, they put all these words in front of the ologists.
You know some of my story. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Right. And the only one of those 17 that admitted that they couldn't help her was our first doctor, and that was our general MD. And when we went in with the symptoms, she looked at Brendan, she said, I need to tell you, I can't help you. I don't know what's wrong with you, and I don't even know what tests to run. So then we went through the gamut, and most of them told her it was in her head. The neurosurgeon, the neurologist told her to just go on massive narcotics. I said, she's going to be dead in 5 years. Well, if you want to get rid of the pain, that's what you got to do. And I said, that's not a option. So obviously we walked out the door. So then what happened is that 2 years later, and Brenda was almost dead. She had gone from 115 down to 89 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, she looked anorexic, and our daughter had just become a natural health practitioner, because right about the time my wife got sick, we had an episode, and I'm not going to get into too much details, but our grandson had something happen to him after a 2-month episode with the doctor, and he was injured, and my daughter actually figured out how to detox him. So she became a natural health practitioner. Well, she walked into the house. Yeah. And it was a lifesaver for her son and for my wife, because she walked in the house and In 15 minutes, she looked at Brenda and said, "You have Lyme disease from the waist down." And, no doctor had caught this. And her mentor confirmed that 4 days later. So now she's still recovering. She's still ill. And that's,
Lyme disease, it's a lifelong thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it generally is. There are people, if they catch it fast enough, and really, and I'm going to say this, and hopefully I don't get struck down. If you catch it fast enough and hit it with heavy antibiotics, you can possibly get rid of most of it. But generally speaking, Lyme disease never leaves your body. And so, like, my wife hasn't actually had Lyme disease perhaps for 8 to 10 years. Okay, it's dormant, but she has the things that set it off. That's pesticides, mercury, and lead. Okay, so the last time that she got really sick, we went golfing. Well, there's pesticides on the golf course, and we had a golf outing with two of our sons. She couldn't come in and have supper with us. She had to go lay down in the back seat of the car, and she was in bed for 2 weeks. And we went through a field. We live in northern Wisconsin, and they have a lot of potato fields. And in the summer, they spray. We drove through there while they were spraying. She got sick for weeks because it kicked off the Lyme. So, we now know what her triggers are. But what that did is it forced us, because she became celiac and grain intolerant. Okay. And she can't eat processed food. Now, you look at that, you think about this. When you can't eat any grains, that's rice, corn, wheat, the whole deal. Okay.
Which is in most of, like, pretty much all of our food supply at the grocery stores these days.
So, we started reading the labels and the ingredients, and we realized that we weren't going to be shopping this stuff, because here was our rule. Our rule was, if it has more than 5 ingredients, we don't even think about it. And if in those 5 you can't pronounce one of them, you absolutely don't want to eat it, because they're putting that in there because they're masking something that you shouldn't have. And they're calling it a name that you don't know. So no processed food, no nitrates, all this stuff. I fed her a smoked pork chop one time. She got sick for days. She said, go down into the garbage. I got the label out. Sure enough, it had nitrates in it.
Oh, man.
To preserve it. So, you learn now, we buy our pork chops from a butcher. They don't put anything in them. Okay. It comes right. And so I checked, our beef is all 100% grass fed. I go to the farm, and I'm blessed. So and I'm not saying this to throw it at anybody. I have the ability to buy my beef, and I can see the fields where the where the cows are eating.
Same here in Texas. We have that opportunity a lot out here. Yeah. You buy part of the cow.
Right. And I buy half a cow.
You buy part of the cow, and
roast,
then
steaks, hamburger. Yep.
Yeah. So, and you can choose, because we have my husband has gout very bad.
Yep.
And any hamburger meat or any beef that is not grass fed flares it so severely.
Yeah. I can imagine that, just so you know. I understand completely. So that set us on this, she created a pasta made from garbanzo beans. And so we were big pasta eaters. Well, she couldn't do that. So she created that. And I still sell it to 2 accounts, but it's made from garbanzo beans, non-GMO project verified. And it tastes just like real pasta. So we can have spaghetti, we can have fettuccine, we can have noodles, we can have mac and cheese. We just use good cheese that she can eat, and we mix it, we melt it with organic butter. So anyway, we went down this rabbit hole, and unfortunately we had to go down the rabbit hole because of her health. But the end result is we eat really well. I make most of our meals from scratch. Okay. Because obviously we don't eat out, rarely. And, when we do, it's a crapshoot, whether she'll get sick from cross-contamination. 1 out of 5 times she'll get sick.
It's going to hurt her more than she's going to benefit from it.
Yes, right. So it's, we go out to eat twice a year on special occasions to our favorite restaurant. She has a steak and a baked potato. And if the steak is not cross-contaminated with gluten, she's fine. But, and that's not their fault. We go in completely and we don't blame anybody because they don't claim it's not gluten free. So fast forward then to a couple of years ago, I got certified as a self-sabotage coach. And there's a pillar in self-sabotage. It's the physical pillar. And what that does is it's the usual suspects. It's alcohol, it's nicotine, it's caffeine, it's drugs, it's prescription drugs, it's overeating, it's a lack of sleep. It's all the ways we self-sabotage. And we all do this, okay? And so, and to get something out right off the bat here, I am not anti-caffeine. My book is not anti-caffeine. What we are is pro-health and pro-knowledge.
I was going to say, all you're trying to do is spread knowledge.
Right.
And you're not being judgmental in any shape or form, because guess what? You've lived it. You understand it.
I do.
And with that knowledge is why, you kind of were forced to change your living.
Yes.
And learning these things. And I understand because of the things that I went through with my head injury and stuff like that.
Yep.
When you learn these things, you're like, hey, hello, we need to get this out here a little bit more.
Yep. It goes back to Socrates, which is thousands of years ago. You don't know what you don't know. And that is, if you think about that long enough, your head kind of explodes. So you don't think about it too hard. But, and there's something here that I'm going to bring up, and it's called cognitive dissonance. And it's a real thing. And I want to explain it to your listeners, and that is we have been programmed throughout our lives to believe certain things. Okay. And when new information is introduced to us that counteracts what we've learned and what we believed all of our lives, we generally don't accept it. Most people just ignore it and they won't even acknowledge it. But cognitive dissonance is when you're presented with the facts and they're objective facts and they're real and you ignore it because it goes against your common beliefs and what you've been programmed to believe. And coffee and caffeine is something that has huge cognitive dissonance. Okay. Yes. And that, and alcohol is the same way. People, everybody, what's a little bit? A little bit doesn't hurt. Well, a little bit leads to a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, and you're drinking every day and you're drinking a lot every day. And pretty soon you don't know what day it is. And caffeine doesn't do that, but it does other things. And so, as I handed out my book to friends and family, I had a number of people, and I've actually had this happen in presentations. They will look at me and say, "You can't take my coffee from me." And my response is, I have no intention of taking your coffee from you because we all have free will and free won't. And you control what goes in your body, not me. Okay. And I have no desire to make you do anything because one, I can't. Okay. Because we control what we put in and we take the consequences. And again, we all self-sabotage. So we all do stuff that's not good for us. Okay. I acknowledge that, my biggest self-sabotage is I'm an overindulger. Okay. When I start to eat, I don't stop. I just can't. I open up a bag of potato chips. I can't eat one chip. Okay. I'm generally going to eat at least half the bag, maybe the whole bag. So what do you do?
Said it right, didn't they? You just can't have just one.
Right. You're right. And so what I do, I do fasting a lot to control my weight. And I'm right now, I am, how many hours? I'm 42 hours, 43 hours into a 48-hour fast right now as we speak. And I am clear. 72 hours is the big one. And I've done a couple because that actually resets some things in your body. Okay. And it does reset your cells. I would recommend you don't just go to 72. You got to practice with first 18. You do the 18-6 thing where you only eat for 6 hours a day and then go to a 24. And see, because a lot of it's mental. Because right now, as we're talking, I am not hungry, and I haven't eaten since a day ago at 5 o'clock. Because at 5 o'clock tonight it'll be 48 hours, and I'm gonna have a big old steak Okay, is what I'm going to do. Okay, I already got it out. It's all ready to go on the grill. So,
that's my reward.
Not that I'm looking forward to this at all, but anyway, so that was a tangent. I'll go back. So where, we go to the physical pillar. I picked caffeine because I felt, as I did research on this, that 85% of adults and most people, even teenagers and adolescents, drink caffeine every day. Mm-hmm. And about 99.8% of them have no idea what it's doing to them. Other than they're getting a buzz, they're getting high, because you are getting high. It's just a little high. It's a mild high. It's dopamine. And so the best way for me to start here is to explain to you what I do and my natural circadian rhythm. Okay. And that is, I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do, now I have an east-facing living room window. So back when the sun was up, I looked at the sun. Now it's dark. So what I do is I have a sun lamp, right? And what this does is it helps to boost my cortisol. And cortisol is a stress hormone, but it's naturally produced by every one of us in the morning. Because what it does is it gets you going, okay? And this is nature's way of getting you going. And I'm going to make an observation here. Our bodies are beautifully and wonderfully made, and we proceed to screw them up through self-sabotage. And that can be caffeine, that can be nicotine, it can be alcohol, whatever, whatever the case may be. If we allow our bodies to function the way they are, it gives you energy in the morning and it puts you to sleep at night. Because as my day goes, my cortisol level goes down and my melatonin and adenosine goes up. Now, many people have heard about melatonin. Okay, it's not mainstream, but very few people know about adenosine. And adenosine is the key thing here, because adenosine is what actually puts you to sleep at night. And you have receptors in your brain. And as you go through your day, the adenosine molecules start to go into your adenosine receptors, and it makes you tired. So I go to sleep at night naturally, generally between 9:45 and 10:15. And I sleep till between 5 and 6 in the morning. And I'm 68 years old. I'm on no meds. 50 to 75% of my nights, I don't get up. I don't wake up to go to the bathroom, to do nothing. I sleep right through. Okay. Now, you can't go drinking a whole glass of water before you go to bed, or you're going to have to go up and go to the bathroom. Okay. So there is some common sense here. Okay. And that was a bold statement, because not a lot of people these days seem to have common sense. Okay. So I'm not insulting.
You're absolutely correct on that. You are.
I am not insulting anybody. But
you're right.
If you drink, when I used to go out at night and drink beer all night, I'd pee 2 or 3 times a night. Well, you're not getting really good sleep then. So that was a big tangent again. So anyway, we're going to go back to the adenosine. So the adenosine puts you to sleep. Now, I also drink lemon water first thing in the morning, at least 20 ounces, because what does it do? It rehydrates me, rehydrates all my cells. Because when you sleep, you're not getting any hydration, and you lose weight overnight. If you pay attention, generally I lose 2 pounds overnight, no matter what, because I'm dehydrated. So I rehydrate, and what it does, that sunlight actually helps boost your cortisol. Now, unfortunately, the majority, I believe, of people that drink caffeine drink it first thing in the morning, because they need it to get started, because they're in a withdrawal. Some of them have already started their adenosine headache. They have a little brain fog. They have a little fatigue. So what do? You get your butt over to the coffee pot or the teapot or energy drink, and 5 or 10 minutes later, you are good to go, right? Mm-hmm. So what did that do? This is a big deal, because the first thing it did is it jumped your cortisol. Okay, caffeine, in whatever form, boosts your cortisol. Now, your cortisol already is up, because that's what your body is doing. So when you start to artificially introduce cortisol into your system, it's going to mess with your circadian rhythm. That's your sleep cycle. That's that wake up with cortisol, go to sleep with adenosine. You can kind of kiss it goodbye. With that being said, people that drink caffeine, even chronic users, sleep at night. I'm not telling you they don't, but the quality of their sleep isn't very good. And I'll get into that in a minute. So your cortisol goes up. Now, ironically, if you do this 3 to 5 or 6 times a day, every time you drink caffeine, it shoots cortisol in. You have excess cortisol, and it goes, and you literally goes around your belly. It's called cortisol belly. And even healthy people,
I know I got it.
You can get it, right? Because it's got to go somewhere because you're not using it because it's a stress hormone. It's fight or flight. Now, the next thing it does is it goes into your adrenal glands and then other parts of your body, and it releases dopamine. And dopamine is a wonderful thing, okay, because it makes you feel good. It's your natural high. And there's nothing wrong with that until you start to use it and pump dopamine into your body all the time. And then all of a sudden your body says, your adrenals say, well, he's kind of teasing me. I'm just going to release less dopamine because this is happening so many times throughout the day. And then the big one, it releases adrenaline. When the caffeine hits your adrenal glands, it releases adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a wonderful thing because it can save your life because it's called the fight or flight stress hormone for a reason. It increases your blood pressure, it increases your heart rate, and it also shoots glucose into your muscles. Because remember, you're going to fight or flight. So you're going to fight somebody, okay? Or you're going to run from a bear or a lion or tiger. Oh my, right? And so, however, how many people after they drink their first cup of coffee are using that glucose? They're not.
Not at all.
No. The only guys that are doing it, and women, if they do a pre-workout drink, okay? And we're going to get to that because it is a big deal, especially for men, getting testosterone. So you have all this glucose in your muscles every time you drink caffeine. And so you're not using it because you're not fighting or flighting. And what happens is your blood sugar goes up. Well, what's your body's natural reaction? It pumps insulin, right? And that's, again, we're wonderfully and beautifully made. And so once again, though, you do this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day, and your pancreas says, you know what? You're abusing me, and I'm just not going to put quite as much insulin in there more because I'm getting tired. Okay, I'm being a little facetious because that's how your pancreas is saying. And that's what happens when you get into type 2 diabetes. Your pancreas isn't producing as much insulin as it used to. And so
that's crazy.
Does this happen to every person? No.
Lead to this.
Right. Yeah. But so all these things are happening and nobody knows. And why? Because if everybody knew, many of them would stop drinking maybe completely or less, right? Well, we can't have that because it's $1 trillion business. I did a podcast a couple months ago, and we were talking about this it was a guy, and I said, my mission here, I feel like the salmon swimming upstream, and we've all seen the picture, right? And it's what a struggle to go up and spawn because it wants to reproduce. And he looked at me and he chuckled and he said, "No, Steve, you're not a salmon swimming upstream. You are a salmon swimming against a tsunami." And he's absolutely right because, the pushback from the cognitive dissidents is just tremendous. Yeah. This doesn't affect me. Okay. And I mean, I had a podcast host a couple of weeks ago and he I think he wanted to have an argument and I don't argue. Okay. This is not an argument thing. Because he said, I drink a Diet Coke at 11 o'clock at night and I go right to sleep. And that's his story. And that's okay. Because he did. And I'm not discounting his experience. However, his sleep cycle was terrible. And we'll get into that in just a second. Okay. Because once you drink caffeine, you no longer control what's happening in your body. Because your body is made to deal with this, right? It's made to deal with the adrenaline, with the dopamine, with the cortisol. And so you're going to have these responses. And ironically, the caffeine molecule is very similar to the adenosine molecule. So when you drink caffeine, the caffeine molecule can cross the blood-brain barrier. It goes into your adenosine receptors and it plugs them. And this is why you feel alert. Okay, that's the reason. And until that adenosine receptor opens back up, you've got a little buzz, not just from the dopamine, not just from the adrenaline, but also the fact that your adenosine receptors are closed now and you're not getting tired. Now, there's a cycle here, and we all react differently, so there's going to be exceptions to everything that I say. But the general rule, is that the caffeine molecule is going to plug that adenosine receptor, and you're going to be wired. And the term is wired but tired, because your body at some point throughout the day is going to say, that's enough, I'm tired. My brain says I'm not, but my body says I am. And that's dangerous. That's a dangerous point to be at. And it's a cycle. And my book is called Release the Coffee Cuffs, Winning the Battle with Caffeine. I have 14 chapters in the middle. There's over 300 references. So what I'm talking about here is not my opinion. It's based on research and studies. And in those 14 chapters, I believe in every chapter we talk about this cycle, and it's rinse and repeat. Once you start drinking caffeine and you come down, when your adrenaline runs out, when your cortisol runs out, when your dopamine runs out, you start to have withdrawal symptoms. And what are you going to do? You're going to have more caffeine. And you're going to do it probably throughout the day. Hopefully not after 5 o'clock. Hopefully not after noon. Hopefully not after 10 o'clock. I'm just throwing this out there, because what happens then is your sleep cycle is going to be disrupted. And sleep is the foundation to good health. And I'll tell you why. Because in your sleep cycle, the first one is 5%. That's stage 1, and that's where you're in semi-consciousness. You're just about to fall asleep. Caffeine can delay that and make it harder to go to sleep in some people, depending on your sensitivity. Stage 2 is the longest cycle, and that's 40%. And there's not a lot going on in stage 2. You may dream a little bit. You may have a little brain activity. But stage 3 and stage 4 is where all the good stuff happens. So stage 3 is 20 to 25% of your sleep cycle. Now, this is a normal sleep cycle, right? And what you do in stage 3 is you heal. Men produce testosterone. Women produce estrogen. Your body heals the muscles in stage 3. When your sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm is disrupted, it will delay stage 3 and shorten it. Now we get to stage 4. Stage 4 is where you dream, and where your subconscious is doing some repairs in your brain. And it's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and it's deep sleep, okay? When it's disrupted, it's also activated not as fast, and it's also shortened. Now, here's something that I learned. Now, because as I'm writing this book, I mean, I'm having light bulb moments like every half an hour, because I'm thinking, I didn't know this, because you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so that sleep cycle, those 4 stages, happen 4 to 6 times a night. So 4 to 6 times, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4. But every time stage 3 and stage 4 are shortened and stage 2 is lengthened. So you're not healing. You're not getting that restorative sleep. So what happens? You wake up and you're tired. And what do? You drink more caffeine. That's right. And it's whatever your choice is, whatever your poison is. Pick your poison, soda, right? Coffee, tea, energy drink, right? It can be anything, right? And so
you're telling me that so I know that depression happens when you don't get good sleep. From my own neurologist, my own experiences, because I've always had, especially since hitting my head, I've always had a rough time sleeping and staying asleep. The neurologist would always be like, that's the leading cause of depression these days.
Yep.
And so it also leads to low testosterone and low estrogen, obviously.
Yep.
And also can lead to type 2 diabetes. Now, this isn't everybody. This isn't diagnosis. This is just the things that can happen.
Yep.
That can progress and cause more serious issues down the road. Because when your pancreas starts shutting down and stops working, your gallbladder stops working. What do?
Yep. I didn't touch on this, but you kind of hinted at it. Is that there's all kinds of things that happen throughout the day and at night, but when you don't get that deep sleep and you don't heal, you're just going to feel lousy, and the only way to get out of it is a stimulant, okay, and that's caffeine or whatever your choice is, But so as we go through that sleep stage cycle, it can take anywhere from 2 months to a year and a half to really recover. Okay, the immediate impact is fast. Okay, and I would not suggest anybody ever quit cold turkey. You can do it, but tapering is much easier, and your life is much easier, and you're not crabby all the time. And this is a challenge, okay, because what happens is that quitting physically is fairly easy compared to staying off of it. Okay, an observation, my daughter and I do a podcast once in a while, and we were talking about alcohol because we were talking about caffeine, and she said we were talking about alcohol, and she said, does anybody ever graduate from AA? That's a good question, right? Because you don't, because you can't graduate. It's an ongoing process. It's the same with caffeine. So if you're going to quit, you need to have a plan. Mm-hmm. You don't just randomly, and I'm going to send you some links with a whole bunch of tools and trackers that people can use. And even if you don't quit, if you don't quit because of what you're hearing here, I would ask you to do one thing. First thing in the morning, drink lemon water and wait an hour till you have your first cup of coffee, because then your cortisol has had a chance to naturally occur without the boost, and you're going to be hydrated, okay? Which is really important, because dehydration can lead to a number of things.
Yeah, a lot of us are nowhere near as hydrated as we should be. We think we are, but we're really not.
Yep. I go to the bathroom probably 8 to 12 times a day. I drink water. I drink soda, but I drink Zevia with no caffeine, and Zevia is non-GMO. Mm-hmm. And of anything that's got flavor, that's my drink of choice. Okay, but when you start drinking other diet sodas, because Zevia has no calories. Okay, and that's what I'm looking for. But you start drinking diet. 6 months ago, I was drinking, while I'm finishing the book, I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper, because I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm drinking something that doesn't. I looked at the can, it has caffeine in it. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm drinking 2 or 3 cans of this a day. And then I went out and looked at Sundrop, which is another popular citrus soda. Sundrop has the highest caffeine content of any 12-ounce can of normal soda, more than Mountain Dew, more than Coke. Okay, and who would think? Nobody, right? And one of the links I'm giving you is got 1,000 different beverages, their caffeine content in the United States and Canada. So it's got Starbucks, it's got all the sodas, but I mean, it's got Starbucks, every size of Starbucks, how much caffeine. And you when you see this, you'll just be shocked. That large Starbucks.
I know I had a Mountain Dew addiction way back when I was cleaning houses and cleaning bars and working 4 different jobs.
We called it liquid heroin.
Yeah, I call it liquid heroin because it was literally so difficult to get off. I won't touch Mountain Dew now. Not even a drop of it. 1, because I really liked it, but 2, because of that headache that you were talking about, the
Yep.
extreme fatigue,
Yep.
I was even nauseous. Like
Yes.
there
Oh,
was
yeah.
there was
Oh, yeah.
absolute real withdrawals, people, to
Yep.
this, and I won't even touch it. But yeah, I call Mountain Dew liquid heroin. So if this stuff is even stronger than Mountain Dew, wow.
Yep. So we'll talk about what it does to us. Okay. First, we'll hit men first, because one of the things when we talk about men and women and the effects, this is relevant to everybody, because everybody has at least one man and one woman in their life because they have a mom and dad. Okay, obviously you have partners, you have husbands or wives, you have sisters and brothers. What does it do to a man? Okay, first of all, and this is where I talk about the pre-workout drink. Okay, and there's a lot of guys going to the gym, and my daughter does this, and she knows, and she's trying to quit right now, and it's been a real challenge. They get this pre-workout drink. It's probably got somewhere around 200 milligrams of caffeine, plus other substances that have natural caffeine that aren't listed. Okay. So what it does is it makes them get something called PRs, personal records, right? Because everybody there wants to be the strongest, best guy there, right? And it's not just a guy thing. It's also a girl thing. Okay. They all want to be the best. So when that happens, you actually, while you're lifting, you actually produce testosterone. Okay. And that's not a bad thing. However, when you come down from that pre-workout drink, now you realize you're already at a toxic load of caffeine. And this isn't the only caffeine these people drink during the day. What happens is that when they come down now, cortisol and testosterone do not get along. So the more cortisol you have in your body, the less testosterone you have, and you won't produce. And so you now are going to be you have more, and so every time you drink caffeine, you have more cortisol, your testosterone goes down. I talked about testosterone in sleep. That's when men produce a lot of testosterone in stage 3. Mm-hmm. So what does that do? Well, it affects their libido. Okay. And that is a big deal. If you want to have a baby and you don't want to have sex, you're not going to have a baby. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's kind of a common sense thing again, right?
So, but also the lack of libido really causes them to question themselves, and it has a lot of personal impact on the man and the man's mental health.
You're right. Exactly. You're the first person that's ever pointed that out. And so kudos to you. Well done.
Thank you.
So that was a compliment. Absolutely. So what it also does then is it fractures the sperm. So you have a less motility. Okay, they don't swim as well. Now, I'm going to just go back to the blood pressure thing for a minute, because caffeine makes your adrenaline, so it makes your heart beat faster. It raises your blood pressure. So if you're doing this all the time, you are going to end up with high blood pressure, okay? Because it's constant. This is what your body's used to now. This is your new normal. Mm-hmm. And I have a good friend that's same age. I'm 68, never been on a medication. 5 months ago, he went to the doctor. Doctor says, your blood pressure is getting a little high. I'm going to put you on a medication. So he goes on it and he feels absolutely terrible. So he calls up the doctor. The doctor says, okay, we'll just switch you to something else. This one just feels a little less terrible. And his blood pressure wasn't even dramatically high, because I understand numbers, but the doctor
didn't say, hey, how much caffeine are you taking in? There was no investigation. It was just, let's throw a prescription at you.
Plus, do you smoke? Do you drink? He's not a heavy drinker.
Yeah, there's multiple factors that people have in their lives and that people put in their lives.
So I said to him, I see him once a month at least. We chat. We get together. And he was telling me about this, and I said, if you want to lower your blood pressure naturally, I can help you. And he said, nope, I like my life just the way it is. I want to be able to drink, because he drinks coffee in the morning, sodas. He'll throw in a Red Bull mid-afternoon. He said, I like my life just the way it is, and I'll just put up with the side effects of the drug. Well, I can't help that. I can't help them. So, and we're still good friends. We still get together. And so now you look at what happens to a woman. And this is a big, we talked about what it does to the man and the sperm and the libido. In a woman, and also in men, but men don't want to admit this, is that will make you more anxious and more nervous, okay? Because men don't want to admit that they might be anxious or nervous, because real men don't do that, right? Okay, yeah. Well, real men actually admit that they have an issue, but that's not the point. The point is that in our society, men aren't supposed to talk about these things, right?
Yeah, there's this very big, large stigma about men discussing what they're experiencing mentally and physically.
Correct. So in a woman, then, caffeine exasperates the anxiety and the nervousness. And so they naturally are more anxious and nervous than men. And now you throw caffeine in there, and then we're gonna tie it in with the conception thing quickly. When women drink caffeine, it constricts blood vessels and it decreases the blood flow to the uterus. That doesn't cut it off, but it decreases it. And so you now have a man that has fractured sperm and a woman who has less blood flow to the egg. You put those two together, and it conceivably, yes. And people that drink caffeine have babies every day. So don't tell them. But
this is just what possibly can happen type thing.
Correct. Yes.
It's not in everybody, but when you are trying to conceive a child, you're not looking at every single thing.
Right.
And the doctors aren't looking at this specific thing.
They're not. So my message is always, do you know someone?
I've got people ringing in my head all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, right. And so not just by listening to this podcast, but by just spreading the message to people that you know. Because just think, if quitting caffeine, by both of them, a couple, and they can have a baby, that's
no money in that.
That's mind blowing.
But there's no money in that.
No, you're right. Good point. Yeah. And I know how facetious that was. I get it. Okay, because it's all this is driven by profit, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Everything is driven by money in this world.
Yes. And so we have the woman. So she's got this decreased blood flow to her uterus. Ironically, I know a lot about the menstrual cycle. In fact, I probably know more about menstrual cycles than most women. Okay, because caffeine in the menstrual cycle is dramatic. Because there's a particularly in the luteal phase, which is the 14 to 28 days of the cycle, and that's right before you have your period. Mm-hmm. During that time, because of the rise in estrogen, now this also happens if you take birth control pills. This is all the time because of the estrogen content. During that period of a menstrual cycle, the woman processes caffeine up to 70% slower. Okay, now this is a big deal because you realize the half-life of caffeine is 5 to 8 hours. So now so for 2 weeks, if that woman is still drinking caffeine, the half-life now has gone from 5 to 8 to 8 to 12. So she has a 150 milligram cup of coffee at noon. At 10 o'clock at night, she's still got 75 milligrams active in her body. And again, she goes to sleep. It's just her sleep cycle.
Still meaning that she's under the influence of the caffeine.
Yep. And that's assuming she doesn't have any the rest of the day.
Yeah, which there's caffeine in, like you were saying, there's natural caffeines that aren't being listed on the ingredient packages. There's caffeine in a lot of things and it's not being put down, basically.
Right. Yep. And so it's just like my Diet Dr. Pepper. You have to be your own advocate. Okay. And we learned this when my wife was sick, and even now, obviously now, but when we first went into the medical system, we realized that nobody cared about her. Her and I were the only two people, and obviously my daughter, okay, and my family, but you know what I mean? That direct influence, if you don't advocate for your own health, No one else will. And they will just put you on pills. They will cut you. They will tell you to eat. I mean, there's people in cancer wards that are eating sugar, copious amounts of sugar.
Which
and cancer feeds cancer. Okay? And they ignore
they're not
it.
them on oils, which kills cancer.
Yes. So, there's, again, common sense. But we can't say that word because that's people take offense. So we're going to go back to the mom now. And this is my mission here in my everything I do is to spread knowledge. I'm pro knowledge and pro health. And I can't make anybody quit caffeine. And I have no desire to because we're all adults, okay? However, there's one person that does not have free will and free won't. And that's this person right here, the fetus. The fetus is completely reliant on mom. And everything that mom takes in, the fetus gets. Because caffeine goes through the placental barrier, it goes through the placenta, it goes through the blood-brain barrier. Now, here is something that I learned, and I'm researching. I still research this because it's so scary to me. And I'm gonna go on just a short tangent here. I did a podcast yesterday with a guy in England, and he made this observation. He said, "How many people will research something when they know what they find out they're not going to like?"
Not very often, because you don't ask questions you don't want the answers to.
That's right. So you don't ask. So as I dive into this rabbit hole of fetuses, I found this. And this is not my opinion. These are documented studies, okay? Caffeine can lead to low birth weight. It can lead to miscarriages. It can lead to stillbirth. And again, this is not every miscarriage and every stillbirth, but it can lead to developmental issues. It can lead to ADD, ADHD, because here's the funny thing, not funny, it's funny, ironic, I don't know what it is. Adults process 95% of their caffeine through their liver through an enzyme called the CPY1A2. There's no quiz on that, just so you know. But babies don't develop that enzyme until they're 3 to 6 months old. And it doesn't fully work till they're 1 to 2 years old. So when caffeine goes into, if mom is drinking caffeine every day, it goes into the baby and the baby holds it. And if let's say I'm a mom and I quit caffeine, the caffeine stays in the baby for up to 100 hours, 4 days, because that's how long it takes the baby to clear it out through blood flow. So obviously, if mom is drinking caffeine in any amount every day, the baby is on caffeine 24 hours a day.
Which is having an effect on those brand new little organs, the heart, the pancreas, all of it.
Yep.
The brain, all of it.
So now, let's go to birth. Baby's born. 12 hours after baby's born, the adenosine receptors open up. What do the doctors and nurses say? Oh, this is common. Your baby's colicky. Nobody now realize that when moms come in that are addicted to drugs, when the baby's born, the doctors deal with the baby as an addict.
Yes, but they deal with the withdrawals. They expect the withdrawals, but they're not doing it with caffeine because it's not being recognized as a drug in the hospitals.
Because it's cognitive dissonance, because those doctors and nurses are all drinking caffeine and it's not bothering them. So why would it bother the baby? Why would it bother mom, right? I mean, and I'm not picking on them, but I'm making an observation that this is what they don't know what they don't know.
And it could be a whole lot more serious than what we actually really do know. That's
right. Yes. Yep. So when you look at, I have in my immediate family 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth. I have two grandchildren that aren't here. My daughter and my daughter-in-law both had miscarriages that we know about, And were they caused by caffeine? I have no idea. Okay, it doesn't matter. I don't know, but my niece had a stillbirth baby, 7 months old, and they had an open casket for a 7-month-old fetus. And if that doesn't rip your heart out, you don't have a heart. And why I bring this up is because my micro mission and what I'm presenting to you and what I want to share with everyone, if you know someone, is that by doing what I do, if I can influence one pregnant mom to stop drinking caffeine while she's pregnant and she has a healthy baby, you and I may have been responsible for saving a life.
Exactly.
And that is the most powerful thing in the world. Okay, and we have this at our fingertips by spreading this message. Because at the end of the day, the caffeine is going to affect the fetus. And again, all miscarriages and all stillbirths and all low birth weights aren't necessarily from caffeine. But if you're that 1 in 1,000, your baby is stillborn, and you are drinking caffeine, you possibly could have avoided that. And I'm not shaming anybody here, just so you know. Life is life, okay? And we all roll the dice. Being healthy is not easy. In fact, it's extremely hard work. Now, I know because I have to be healthy because I have to take care of my wife, and she has to eat a certain way in order to stay alive. Realize we're the exception. We're the way exception to the rule because, most people don't have this. You can eat processed food and you think you're not getting sick, but you are.
You are. It's just a slower process. You don't feel it immediately, or you do feel it and you don't recognize it because it's subtle. But you absolutely are being affected,
right?
Because the processed food is not food.
No, and
it's chemical.
Here's a kind of philosophical question for and I know we're almost done. We're not quite done, but I want to get this in here. It's something for you and all your listeners to think about. Do you really know what it's like to feel healthy?
No, I don't.
No.
I know I don't.
Yep. And most people think that their baseline when they're drinking caffeine is healthy, and it's not. I'm healthy. I feel healthy. I wake up in the morning. I have energy. I'm zipping around, and my wife is not a morning person, and she doesn't drink caffeine at all. Okay, but that's not the point. She's just irritated because I have so much energy, and when she has to get up and go with me on a road trip or something, she just says, just tone it down. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I 30 years ago, I was supposed to. My doctor and I agreed I was going to have to have a knee replacement. Cartilage was gone. When I went on that diet with my wife and we cut out all the gluten and all the grains, I realized we're cutting off glyphosate then as well. So I have no inflammation in my body, little to no inflammation in my body. My knees stopped hurting. And today I have no knee pain. 30 years later, I have no knee pain because of how I eat.
And people wonder why our food system is so jacked. Let me explain to you right in that story right there why it's so jacked. Do you know how much it costs to get a knee replacement, people? It's not cheap. Do you know how much it costs to have an organ just removed from your body? Yep. It's not cheap. And organs shouldn't just be removed because, hey, they're no longer working or type thing. There's reasons why these are happening to us.
There was a reason God put everything in there, right? I mean, let's face it.
We may not understand that reason, but guess what? They're there for a reason. I know. I had my gallbladder removed,
So did my wife.
My diet due to high stress, due to diet, and then I now feel the effects of it. I had gastric surgery because I didn't have this knowledge. Now it's even harder for me to lose weight because I'm not getting the vitamins and the nutrition that my body should be getting because I have to do protein shakes every day.
Yep.
in order to keep me healthy.
Ironically, now that my wife had her gallbladder taken out before my daughter got to her, because she has ways to get rid of gallstones naturally through supplements.
That's great news, because gallbladders are being taken out left and right.
Oh yeah. And what happens now, because Brenda's MTHFR gene was damaged, she doesn't methylate well, so she gets kidney stones and pancreatic stones. But she's so in tune with her body now that she knows, she can feel it. Kidney stones are not a laughing matter. They can be extremely painful, right? So what she does is she takes a certain there's 2 or 3 supplements she takes, and here's the kicker. And my daughter told her to do this. She drinks Coca-Cola with them, because Coca-Cola is so toxic. You've seen the YouTube videos where they clean toilets with it. Okay, well, that's going into your body. Well, what it's doing is it's helping those supplements break down those stones. Okay, and I mean, I could go into stories about this, but the bottom line is our bodies are beautifully and wonderfully made, and if we give them the chance, we can repair or solve most of our problems. Okay, we regenerate all of the parts of our body. And so, my message once again is, do you know someone that's being affected by caffeine negatively, health-wise, and also psychologically? I mean, we didn't even talk about the social pressure to drink caffeine. It's just like,
yeah, we can have you come back on and we could do another one for sure.
We could, yeah, because I'd love to do one on self-sabotage, because that's that herd mentality.
Yes.
When you leave the herd, you're an outcast. So if you go to work every day and you're drinking coffee, because let's face it, they want you to drink coffee because they believe that it helps. It doesn't. In the long run, it doesn't help. But that's beside the point. That's that cognitive dissonance. But if you go into the coffee room and you start brewing a cup of decaf, or you bring decaf in, you literally are going to be ostracized often. I had breakfast with a good friend of mine a couple months ago, and the waitress comes up and she said, you guys want to start out with coffee? And he said, sure, I'll have a cup. And I said, I'll have decaf. And he slammed his hands down on the table, jumped over the table almost, and said, decaf? And I said, yeah. I said, caffeine doesn't agree with me. About 5 minutes later, I said to him, because I'm good enough friends, I was honest. I said, you realize that 8 or 9 out of 10 people you'd have done that to would have had a regular cup of coffee. Social pressure, peer pressure. It's just like, it's the alcoholic in the bar that quits and has an NA beer. Why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you having a cigarette? Why aren't you doing a line of Coke? Why aren't you smoking the weed with me? Okay. It takes a plan. You got to have a plan. And it takes journaling. It takes fortitude. It takes desire. It takes passion. I told you, my daughter is trying to quit, and she's being challenged, because we figured out she was at 3 to 350 milligrams a day. We had a plan to go to 150 and then go to 100 and then go to 50. She can't get under 100.
It's just a struggle, because it literally is a drug.
Yes. And I know that at the end of the day, she will get off. And my comment to anybody that's even thinking about this is, if you make the commitment to quit, it will happen. Whether it happens in 2 weeks or 2 months or 6 months, you are going to be better off, because getting off of caffeine is freedom and liberation for your body. Okay, you're no longer chained to having that cup right when you get out of bed. You're no longer chained to that energy drink you're having in the middle of the day just to get through the day, because you're going to have all this natural energy. And what people don't believe in my book, my first chapter is called Anecdotal Stories. And I originally put it at the end of the book, and it was an entertainment value thing. I thought, this is kind of cool. We've got these stories, and they're all people that quit caffeine. And as I put it together, I realized that this was possibly the most important chapter, because people see themselves in those stories. and they realize that they're not alone. And, that's why we have a coaching program on our website, and we have multiple tiers, and you can go from very inexpensive to moderately expensive, depending on how much support you want. Because let's face it, quitting, some people just can't quit by themselves. It's just the way it is, and they need help. And I'm here, and I've got the knowledge and the expertise as a coach to do this. Actually, my wife does emotional work, and she does a once a month emotion night. My daughter does mindset work, because this is all, again, physically, it's fairly easy. You just quit, whether it's tapered or cold turkey. But what do you do when you get this social pressure? And you have to have a plan.
Can't have tools in your bag.
That's right. And if you don't, you're going to fail. Because, and as I've talked to, you mentioned the Rock and Recovery and these, I've been on a number of addiction podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And then even a couple guys that weren't in that business. And we talked about this. When I was in the restaurant business, I would have people come up to me and say, well, I'm going to try to quit smoking tomorrow. So I just want you to be aware I could be crabby. And I look at them and I would say, and I would chuckle, and I would say, don't do it. Don't cause the pain on yourself. Don't cause the pain on me and the other employees, because you're going to be crabby. You're going to be cranky. And because you're only trying to quit, you're going to fail. You either quit
or you don't.
Okay.
There's no trying in anything.
There's no in between.
I went to a leadership thing retreat once, and that they said trying is literally, when you say I'm going to try to do something, your brain is setting yourself up for failure at that point in time.
Yep.
Because trying means that you've quit already.
Yes.
You've stopped doing it. You've stopped progressing. And you can say attempt or something like that, but they taught us, don't say the word trying try taking that. See, I did it again.
Right. You got caught in your own words. Right?
I got in the very first chance. But work on eliminating that from your vocabulary, especially when you're making a effort in changing something. Is the word trying literally sets our brains up for failure.
Right. So when you quit, you journal, you do affirmations, and you should do them multiple times a day. Mm-hmm. You do some guide. We have guided meditation. We actually have a hypnotherapy session you can listen to every night before you go to bed. It's 27 minutes. After 30 days, you don't want to drink caffeine anymore, because your subconscious has been programmed. Okay. Because everything's up here. Okay. And we've been programmed from birth. I start out one of my presentations with that Folgers in your cup commercial. Okay. And, most anybody over 30 has probably seen this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mom is in the kitchen. She's brewing coffee. And man, when I talk about this, I get a dopamine hit. Okay. Because she's got these cups. She's got, the beans are just shiny and they're beautiful. And then she takes 2 mugs into the bedroom, and Dad's sitting there, and she hands a mug to Dad, and he smells it. And oh my gosh, I can't wait. So he takes a sip, and it's just wonderful. And then the 2 little boys jump out of their twin beds, and they come around and they hover around Dad with their teddy bears. And then they all have a group hug, and everybody feels so good about this that why wouldn't you want to drink coffee? Especially Folgers, because only Folgers will make you feel this good. Now you realize that oftentimes in our society, Mom's got that cup in her hand and it says, don't talk to me before I drink this. Don't talk to me before 8 a.m. Those kids, because kids from birth to 7 years old are in a theta brainwave state. Everything that they see and learn goes into their subconscious, especially because your sight, everything you see goes in there. Mm-hmm. How are they being programmed? They're being programmed that coffee is
every morning.
Success. You're a good adult. You're a good parent. You're successful. And so so it's not your fault. You've been programmed to do this. There's a guy on YouTube. His name is Darren Brown, and he's in the UK. And again, I talked to this guy from the UK yesterday, and he knows him. And he's done some things which are mind blowing. He hired 70 actors, and they got 3 out of 4 people that weren't involved pushed a guy off a ledge of a 7-story building. They committed murder through social pressure. Now the guys they were stuntmen and they were harnessed. Okay, there was no harm, but he's got a number of things. And so if you don't think you're being influenced by what you're watching on TV or listening to on the radio or seeing in newspapers, they are getting you subconsciously every time. We don't watch mainstream TV because it's all programming. Okay, why do you
programming?
I was just going to say that you're too good at this, Sela. Okay, because you're no, I'm teasing because you're stealing my line, and that is TV programs. That's what they're called. And how many you look at Fight Club? If you're familiar, Brad Pitt, Edward Norton. In every episode of Fight Club, there's a Starbucks cup throughout the whole movie. The director, and you can go to YouTube and you can watch this, okay? And it's because your subconscious is picking that up and saying, I want to be like Brad Pitt. I need to drink Starbucks. Okay.
Yep.
And your subconscious is picking this up. You aren't consciously seeing this. And so, I know we're going to run out of time here. I want to leave you with one thing. We've talked about where you can reach me, and if you go to releasethecoffeecuffs.com, you can get the book there. You can look at our coaching programs. You can contact me. I will respond to your emails. Okay. Because I want to help you if you can, and you don't need to pay for this. This is free. Mm-hmm. But my wife she's got a lot of different sayings. The free will and free won't is one of hers. I call them Brendaisms. And she's got one here that I'll kind of leave you with, and that is this. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. However, you can make it thirsty. And my role is to provide information and make them thirsty for information about what caffeine could be doing to their body. Again, everybody's different. And so, you don't control what happens when it goes in, but we all process differently. Fast metabolizers, slow metabolizers, women in their menstrual cycles, different genes. Okay, so we all process a little differently. So again, take what I say, and does it apply to someone right? And then I will say this. Perhaps that someone is you.
Oh no, it's definitely me. I have to drink coffee every morning. It's not I don't have to, but I'm definitely probably going to switch to decaf now. But
yep.
But I didn't drink caffeine for a long time because there was an interaction with the medication that I was on.
Yep.
Caffeine would interact with my seizure medication.
Yeah.
And so I didn't drink caffeine for a long time. And then I got off my seizure medication. What do? I go straight back to caffeine.
That's right. I want you to be aware that the decaf has 10 to 15% still of caffeine. Mm-hmm. So if you're sensitive,
but it's nowhere near the levels. But I love my coffee. Yep. I love the taste of it. It's more the taste than anything for me.
You see this? I drink this every day. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's organic, Swiss water processed decaf. Now, I'm going to send you a bunch of links you can put in your show notes. And Swiss water process takes out over 99% of the caffeine. And it's with water, because normal caffeine, decaf, they take the caffeine out with chemicals. Okay. So you're getting residue in there. So organic is better. But the Swiss water process, so there are studies, and there's a long story short. I did a deep dive after I heard an influencer tell me that you live longer if you drink coffee and you get more antioxidants from coffee than anything else. Well, I did a deep dive, and there are several studies with 500 to 100,000 people or 1 million people. And they found that people that drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day have a little bit longer lifespan and are a little bit healthier. And in fine print, like with an asterisk, those studies were done half with caffeinated coffee and half with decaf. Caffeine was not the mitigating factor. It was the polyphenols and other things in the coffee. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying here, right?
Oh, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm sure our listeners will too.
Yeah, there's some things in there that are good for you, but the caffeine is not
numbers, and they're changing their factor. Right. They're changing the numbers. They're not. That's not exactly what was going on in that study. That wasn't a trusted study. There.
And then he said that 67% of Americans get 67% of their antioxidants from coffee. And I went and deep dived on that. And he actually was kind of telling the truth, which surprised me, but that's beside the point. But there's a caveat there, is that the standard American diet in the United States, you eat very little foods with antioxidants in. Blueberries, kale, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so because people drink so much coffee, they are actually getting 67% of their antioxidants from the coffee. And, you know, if you can't see the irony here, then you don't have any common sense, okay? Because we got to go back to the common sense thing and the cognitive dissonance. And the fact is that what he said there was true. Now, the first part was complete garbage, okay? He made it up because he's making millions of dollars selling coffee. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to bring his name up. You know, you can go out, you can find him if you want, because he's a very successful guy, and he sells some clean coffee, but it's still got caffeine in it. Okay. In fact, he's got some coffee that's got a lot of caffeine in. So he's all in on this. Okay. So when you look at this whole thing, it is, do you know someone that's being negatively affected health-wise by caffeine? Mental, physical, emotional? Share this information. I've got a lot of information on my website. There's going to be a lot of information in those links that you have that I'm going to give you. Okay.
Okay.
And one of them goes to a website that has 1,000 different drinks in the U.S. and Canada, how much caffeine is in each one. So it breaks down Starbucks to actually size of every coffee they sell. And so the key to recovery or to quitting is to know how much you're actually consuming, because you don't know. And when you find out, your jaw's going to drop. You're going to say, holy crap, I'm drinking that much caffeine? Because nobody knows, because it's in so many things. And ironically, and I don't know if I mentioned this, the caffeine that they take out of the caffeinated beans, they sell the caffeine to the energy drink companies and to the soda companies. Because caffeine is a pesticide naturally produced by coffee plants. It's bitter. It tastes terrible. Why do they put it in sodas? Why do they put it in energy drinks? Because they want you to be addicted to their product.
Exactly why.
And once they get you, and it's $1 trillion business. I have no illusion of ever caffeine disappearing from anything.
No.
My mission is to try to inform people so they can make the best choice for themselves, right? I can't make you do anything, but once you go down those rabbit holes, man, you don't come out.
I bet not. Yeah, I bet not. You and my stepdad would get along very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys would get along very, very well, because he's really big in nutrition.
Yeah.
But his is more with cancer. But but it's the same exact thing that we see over and over again in every industry, in every pharmaceutical, medical, food, you name it. It is over and over and over again. You know, Steve, thank you so much for coming on today. I think that our listeners got a lot of information today, and you know, I know me, I'm going through my mind through all the people. Yeah. It's like a little flip thing going on in there.
And I would be happy. I would really enjoy coming back, and we could do a self-sabotage thing, because
that would be fantastic.
You know, it's kind of like this, but we all self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. Once we can acknowledge it, we can fix it.
Radical acceptance, people.
Yes. There you
That's
go.
where it's at.
Yeah, that's right. So
All right.
anyway, it's been my pleasure, and thank you so much. And I look forward to doing this again with you guys. It has been a pleasure. You are great hosts. You made great contributions to what I had to say. You complimented me, what my knowledge was, my information tremendously, and that it helps that you have some life experience with some of these things. And I'm not discounting that some of those were bad life experiences, because I've had bad life experiences, especially with my wife. And what you do, though, is if you take them and learn from them and improve your life because of them, then something good came out of it. I mean, regularly, my wife says, "You realize we wouldn't know these things if I had never gotten sick."
Exactly.
And, my daughter would have never become a natural health practitioner if my grandson hadn't been injured.
Mm-hmm.
And so, good things come out of that. The good news for him is that he was on the spectrum and he's off, and you would never know that he was on there. The only people that can ever really tell are my wife and my daughter and I, because there's things that trigger him. And, he will literally, he's 13 now, he literally will give himself a timeout sometime. Now, we know that that's because he's overloaded. Okay. Now,
the fact that he's capable of understanding that and comprehending that and catching that at such a young age is remarkable.
Yep.
Very remarkable.
And we're so blessed and lucky that she was able to detox him, the heavy metals in his brain. Mm-hmm. And, when I was demoing throughout the Midwest, I mean, I was in co-ops, which are health food stores, and I saw so many kids come through that were injured, and I knew exactly what was wrong with them, and I kept my mouth shut because it's not my place. Okay. Especially when I'm selling pasta. but anyway, we can talk about some of this next time. How's that?
Yes, so, definitely. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. And so when are you going to have a baby?
My baby is due in like 6 weeks.
Well, but when I see you, we'll be able to have 4 people on the podcast. How's that? Your baby can do a guest appearance and can do this to me and Google and goggle, whatever. I mean, I have 8 grandchildren. I watched my kids be born. I love babies. It's a miracle to have a baby.
It absolutely is. It is a gift and a blessing.
It is. Yep. And so I wish you all the best in that, Giselle. I really do. And you'll be in my prayers for a healthy baby and for you to be healthy. And so, we take life one day at a time. We don't get too far ahead of ourselves, right? And we just keep trying to make our lives better.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to reach out to us, email us at 12lookinthrough34theglass@gmail.com. You can also get us on TikTok at lookinthroughtheglass, THRU for through, and you can also reach out to us on Facebook, which is Looking Through the Glass, spelled the correct way, spaces in between. Appreciate y'all for listening in on this very informative podcast, and
till next time.
Yeah, till next time.